the people, the downtrodden, the disadvantaged, those who languish on the margins of a too often indifferent society. Those are the men and women whom Dame Lois Browne-Evans dedicated her life to serving. Dame Lois was a woman of many firsts. She became Bermuda's first female barrister when women were not allowed to even sit on a jury. Some 6 years before the back of segregation was finally broken by the progressive group's theatre boycott, and when employment in the civil service was still denied to Black people. She achieved this first in the snarling face of both racist and sexist bigotry. She was the first Black woman to be elected into the House of Assembly, which she achieved in part by being the first candidate to introduce canvassing to Bermuda, carefully listening to the concerns of her constituents at their homes. She was the first female opposition leader in the entire British Commonwealth, breaking barriers and smashing glass ceilings, not just on our island, but throughout the world. She was Bermuda's first female Attorney General, and as a consequence of her achievements, her brilliance, and her unending commitment to advancing human rights and protecting our most vulnerable, she was named Bermuda's first national hero. We can declare without any sense of embellishment that Lois cast a long and formidable shadow over virtually every significant political and cultural event that took place in Bermuda in the latter half of the 20th century. We can list her many firsts: her celebrated triumphs in the courtroom, her brilliance, and her impassioned oratory in the House of Assembly. Without a doubt, those who only knew of Dame Lois through her achievements would be impressed, but achievements alone, although laudable, tell us precious little about the person. Make no mistake, the Dame was so much more than a crude tally of work done as a politician and a barrister. Dame Lois knew that being the first only mattered if she was forging a path for others to follow. She did not strive to be the first to achieve these milestones to win praise or acclaim. She was the first to climb these ladders to the top specifically so she could drop the ladder back down behind her for others to be lifted up. She took her firsts and she created a legacy of commitment to the underprivileged. She was their champion and, by extension, all of Bermuda's. I was fortunate to know Dame Lois from a young age, and I became familiar with her laughter, her sharp wit, with her gentle, generous spirit. As a young Black Bermudian girl, a better role model I could not have asked for. She was a fount of knowledge and a sympathetic guide. In spite of all her accolades, she never moved from her place among the people. That's the beauty of Lois Browne-Evans. She was unpretentious to a fault, brilliant and strong-willed, yet disarmingly approachable. And that's why the people, the rank and file, the working class to whom she lent her considerable powers as a lawyer and an MP, loved her so. As opposition leader, she once said, "We don't want a country and a government which makes millions for itself, allowing only a trickle to filter down to the so-called hooligans, termites, scum, and unemployable. We want a government that has a social conscience, coming in with measures to improve the people's life and broaden their law." Dame Lois served in the House of Assembly for 40 consecutive years, all but 5 of which she spent in the opposition. She was never in it for the trappings of political power. Her fight had a grander cause, the building of a fair and just Bermuda where equality and opportunity exists for all. During the 1960s, she took on the hospital trustees and fought on the side of Dr. Barbara Ball to ensure the poorly paid housekeepers and the kitchen, janitorial, and laundry staff had union representation. This stance earned her a bullet in the mail. She persisted, winning them their rights to be part of the union and reinstating Dr. Ball's hospital privileges. She took on causes at great personal risk, but her strength of spirit, her strength of character, and her stubborn refusal to be cowed informed her legal and political advocacy. Quite often in her role as a barrister, she would take on cases for clients she knew would be unable to pay, but she was motivated by a desire to make a better Bermuda. In the 1970s, when an eruption of violence left 5 white men dead, including the Commissioner of Police and the Governor, Larry Tackland and Erskine Buck Burroughs were sentenced to death. Capital punishment had been abolished in the UK. Bermuda hadn't executed anyone for over 30 years, and there was massive opposition. Lois sprang into action. She created a petition for the commutation of the death sentences, signed by over 6,000 people, a substantial part of Bermuda's population at the time. She organized the National Committee Against Capital Punishment. She gained international support, including from Amnesty International, and she took legal action to stay the executions. When the people's calls for mercy were left unanswered, and Larry and Buck were hanged, the islands erupted in riots. In In the aftermath of the uprisings, Lois gave voice to Black suffering. She said, "Why do people hang people at dawn and in the dark?" Because they don't want to see it and have it on their consciences. After the riots, Dame Lois addressed the international press saying, "We have swept a backlog of sociological, economic and political inequities under a manicured facade to fester." She pushed the governor for a royal commission which resulted in the Pitt Report that exposed Bermuda's inequality. 43 years later, we are still dismantling that facade and bringing inequality into the light. But it is because of the risk that she took then that we are able to even do that today. Dame Lois was deeply motivated by a desire to make democracy real in Bermuda. She wanted to give it teeth, she wanted to give it flesh and form on bone. She wanted to bring democracy alive so that everyone in Bermuda, no matter their station, could have equal access to the full breadth and scope of their rights. To that end, she supported a policy change that would allow Portuguese migrant workers, the much maligned manual labourers who came to the island and worked in agriculture and construction at the time, to have their spouses and children with them here in Bermuda. She strongly supported the passing of the Stubbs Bill, which repealed the sodomy laws that criminalised homosexuality. And in her first business as Attorney General, she abolished capital punishment. Lawyer, politician, leader, activist, mentor, visionary, mother, wife, friend, hero. She was the very best of us, a homegrown national treasure. And we are so much better because she passed this way.